evil moments on paternity court.
The sides of the spectrum, I have one man that looks at the baby and can't do anything but cry, and I got one man that's never looked at the baby and is ready to walk away, and then I got the grandmother baby saying she wants the man that doesn't want to be the father and not the man that's crying every time he sees the baby, and I'm saying to myself, who's thinking about the baby?
Simmering resentment and unanswered questions hang heavy in the air as Mr. and Mrs. Holland prepare all their weapons to give you one of the most brutal fights ever seen on paternity court. Will the truth about 2-year-old Bentley's real father come out today?
He's a loving father to our son, and I don't know what I would do without him. He is everything to the both of us.
And you feel your marriage crumbling right under your feet?
Yes, Your Honor.
So do you admit to your past transgressions?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, you admit it?
Yes.
Mr. Holland's claim is simple. His wife is a serial cheat. But who knew that she would admit it to the entire audience as well as Judge Lauren? With her quivering voice, she says yes to all the cheating accusations. But there's a catch. She's cheated, but never slept with anyone.
Some people that I was talking to that were male, he didn't approve of, but I continued talking to them anyhow, and he constantly caught them on my phone, their names, their text messages, Snapchats. He didn't like it. We were constantly fighting, and I ended up pregnant in April.
Yet, despite their happy beginnings, especially how Mrs. Holland helped Mr. Holland achieve a career in the U.S. Marines, it seems these two lost their footing along the way. Despite Mr. Holland's multiple warnings about the people Mrs. Holland kept flirting with on text, the problem stuck.
When I went to the doctor, I was 8 weeks along, and we had an amazing, happy pregnancy. He was there for all the doctor's appointments, all the ultrasounds. He just was overwhelmed because he finally had a baby with the woman that he loved the most. He kept saying that he didn't think it was his because of my promiscuous past.
Turns out that sleeping so much with your husband doesn't always keep him happy, especially if he catches you doing things with other people. Mrs. Holland was slumbering away in bliss one night when Mr. Holland went through her phone. And my, oh my, the pictures he stumbled upon absolutely crushed his heart.
Miss Holland?
Yes, Your Honor.
This don't sound too good. Is this true?
Your Honor, it is true. For all I'm paying.
Above it was enough for me. There was a picture of his that was enough. That was enough to sell it for me.
Wait, was there a picture of your ex's in the text chain, Miss Holland?
Yes, Your Honor.
The most heartless part of this entire dispute is how much Mr. Holland loved his wife. He had the patience to let all bygones be bygones. That is, until he caught Mrs. Holland in the action again. She kept sending her explicit photos to even more ex-boyfriends. Was that how she was raised?
Nobody's ever been born in my family. We're a very deep Irish family, and we all have really dark hair.
I was born with bleach blonde hair. I have blue eyes. I have baby pictures that look just like him. He has your big old egg head, your ears, your black eyelashes. That baby is yours, and I know that he is yours.
Mr. Holland goes on to mention what a close relationship he's come to have with Bentley. For him, that little boy is everything. But the poor man lies awake in restlessness and unease every night because he knows his wife has never been faithful, and he just cannot bear it anymore.
What if her ex is Bentley's father?
I have no clue. How are you supposed to be a father to something, a beautiful child that's not yours, that another man needs to be taken care of because it's a man's job to be a father?
Miss Holland, you admit to every destructive thing you've done to basically rip through the fabric of your marriage.
Yes, Your Honor.
Amidst all the brutal heartlessness, Mr. Holland feels a deep confusion about how to raise Bentley if he's not his son. Even though Mrs. Holland keeps insisting she doesn't have the power that a DNA test does. So, the only way to settle this is to bring the results in.
It has been determined by this court. Mr. Holland, you are the father.
Miss Jones comes to the court to clear up the paternity of her son, Jordan. There are two possibilities as to the father. One is Mr. Morones, who is currently taking care of Jordan, and the other possibility is Mr. Smith, who says he wishes to sign over his parental rights if he's discovered to be the biological father.
I sent Mr. Morones a text message saying that I was pregnant. I never said that he was the only possible father.
So when you told him you were pregnant, you were just like, and I want your address to invite you to my shower?
Right?
Mr. Morones discovered he wasn't the only possible father when Miss Jones confessed it to him one night. Not just that, but she also said that other than Mr. Smith, there was also the possibility of her ex-husband being Jordan's father, because she also slept with him. Miss Jones denies it happened like this.
We were sleeping one night and she came to the room and she was like, I need to get something off my chest. She was like, I was with my ex-husband and I was trying to get my family back. About 2 months later after that, she decides to tell me that somebody I know, she went out to the bar and slept with him.
That is not the way it happened.
Mr. Morones was absolutely devastated when he found out he might not be Jordan's father because he is very attached to Jordan. He says this hurtful information began to feel more real when he realized Jordan has blonde hair and blue eyes, and he doesn't have those physical characteristics, but Mr. Smith does.
When baby Jordan was born, what happened?
I mean, he came out, he was blonde hair, blue eyes, and I was terrified because I didn't think I was his father, especially after she confessed all these other relationships she had. She used to send me pictures all the time saying, why do you want to see him? He's not even your son. It was side-by-side pictures of him.
Are you just trying to play with his head?
Mr. Smith is brought in, and he says he was intimate with her during the window of conception, but the act didn't last long and wasn't completed, which is why he thinks he might not have impregnated Miss Jones. Judge Lawrence says that it's medically possible to father a child, even if the act hasn't been completed.
We had sex, but it maybe lasted 3 minutes until...
That's not true.
I didn't...
And this is the excuse she gave me that I could only be the father is because he was too drunk to perform.
So because your act was not completed, you felt like there's no possible way I could be the father.
Yes, Your Honor.
Judge Lauren asks Mr. Smith why he has doubts regarding Jordan's paternity. He says it's because he was intimate with Miss Jones almost a full year before Jordan was born, which puts him out of the window of conception. When asked, Miss Jones says she does not remember the exact month they were intimate.
In March or April is when you remember being intimate with Miss Jones. But Jordan was born on May 1st. So counting back, that's almost a full year. So you're saying that puts you out of the window of conception.
Yes.
Now, Ms. Jones, is that how your math adds up as well?
I don't know when I was with Mr. Smith.
Mr. Morones once again states that he hopes he's Jordan's father, even if they don't look alike. Judge Lauren comments on the fact that it's obvious Mr. Morones loves this child, while Mr. Smith wants nothing to do with him. So, are the DNA results going to favor Mr. Morones or Mr. Jones?
It is determined that Mr. Morones, you are his father.
Thank you.
I see the joy written all over your face, pouring out of your heart.
The plaintiff went through foster homes not knowing the identity of her biological father. She brought the defendant to court in hopes of having a father. But Mr. Tucker didn't buy it and was prepared to prove otherwise.
I got put in foster care, had to live with complete strangers. I don't have respect for authority or anyone telling me what to do. I've been living from foster home to foster home. I found out at 12 that Myron here, Mr. Tucker, may not be my father.
Evidently, the defendant was ready to fight for custody years ago. However, by that time, Miss Nasirapur had already dropped the bomb of him not being the father. Ouch! Now, she presented her side of the story about what actually happened.
He left me and went to LA, supposedly.
I did not go
When
to-
actually
no.
he was with his girlfriend at the time that
I
was
was
pregnant
not,
as well.
No.
I did tell him that it could be between two guys.
Right,
I
but
wanna
you're
make sure
saying
she's
you were
old enough.
honest with him.
I was honest with him and Darnell Golston. I'm hurt, just like Brittany's hurt. Brittany's torn apart.
The birth certificate came into the play along with something else to back up the plaintiff's claims. Even though Miss Markham Love believed there were two possibilities, her heart called one of those possibilities more.
I have a transcript saying that my last name used to be Tucker, and then I have a birth certificate showing that my last name has switched. I do not have the birth certificate when my last name was Tucker.
So this is your school transcript, and it's showing that your last name was Tucker.
Yes.
Wow, oh wow! The defendant and the mother both weren't so forthcoming about the truth. Guess they didn't believe that truth sets you free. And once upon a time, these guys were in love. Imagine that.
You were living with them as a family, and then you disappeared, and that really meant you went and got married to someone else?
Yes. You cheated on me with a pizza guy, though.
You were in LA. You said you were living in LA.
So-
I was in love with him the whole time.
How you was in love with me and you cheated on me with
How
a
did I
pizza
cheat on
guy?
you? You weren't even there.
Next up, we got to see the narrative of the baby mama packed with emotions. Tissues, anyone? Well, moving on, Mommy put up a valid question for the father, and the cat got his tongue, apparently.
Say and you admit that you've made some
I've
mistakes.
done a lot of mistakes, Your
But
Honor.
ultimately,
I made a lot of mistakes.
I can tell you love your daughter.
I do love my daughter, but you know what? I went to prison. I've done a lot of bad things in my life. I forgave myself. I do my best. But if I was on drugs and I was such a dope fiend, Myron, then you should have stepped up and took her if I was doing so bad. You should have let me take her.
Mommy sincerely believed that baby daddy abandoned her. He, on the other hand, presented a counter-narrative to support his claim that he did not disappear from their lives.
I didn't have no phone number, no contact information at all. Only way I got contact with them is when they sent me the letter stating my daughter was in foster care. That was it. And then when I was going to court to do parenting classes and stuff, I get a letter stating that my parental rights was forfeited.
Because you didn't want to do the classes.
And so,
You wasn't there, you don't know what I did.
It was obvious how much an absence of a father can wreak havoc on a child's life. They all came here for some real answers. So, it was time they got those.
Mr. Tucker, you are not her father. Miss Nasiripour, that's a shocker. Are you okay, Brittany?
I'll be fine.
Mr. and Mrs. Gamboa are present in paternity court over the paternity of their son, Dominic. Mrs. Gamboa says she's sick of Mr. Gamboa accusing her of cheating on him with their live-in babysitter and always saying Dominic is not his son, as it's affected his bonding with Dominic. Mr. Gamboa says Dominic looks like the babysitter.
I was at work, Your Honor, and I got a phone call because we're all living in the same house. My stepfather had called me saying that the babysitter was asleep in my room on the floor with the door shut with my wife in there.
The door wasn't shut, Your Honor.
She said he was on the bed.
Well, when I had got home that morning, he was on the bed.
Mrs. Gamboa says she did not cheat on her husband with the babysitter, even though the babysitter was asleep on their bed. She says the door was open the entire time. Mr. Gamboa says his stepfather called him to say the babysitter was in his room with his wife with the door shut, which caused him to be suspicious.
His stepfather doesn't like me, and he only slept on the floor. When he came home, I was in the living room watching TV, and our babysitter was sitting
Your Honor,
on the bed.
Well, I was working a graveyard shift, so I mean, she would be up by the time I'd be home, so how would I know if she was in the bed with the babysitter?
Because we've been together for so long, you should know that I wouldn't do that to you.
Mrs. Gamboa says the male babysitter was Mr. Gamboa's decision, as the babysitter was homeless and they needed help with their kids. She says her life has been a living hell since that time because Mr. Gamboa says Dominic looks like the babysitter, and his suspicious nature has made her regret the babysitter decision a lot.
The male babysitter was his decision in the first place. It was a mutual friend of ours
And we
that
had-
he knew
you said
more
that
than
we
I
had
did.
discussed. Doesn't
and
mean
then
that-
he was not living with us at the time. And Mr. Gamboa offered him to stay with us because he was homeless with his 2 children.
No, we had
So you
both
took in his children.
Right, and ever since then, it's been a living hell for me.
Mr. Gamboa then says that he also had doubts because he had severe mumps as a kid, meaning there's a chance he might be sterile, and he didn't conceive with his first wife either. Mrs. Gamboa says he should have had these doubts with their first son too. He said he has them now because of the babysitter incident.
I had severe mumps, a case of severe mumps at teenage age, and I was previously with my ex for about 5 years, and I could not conceive with her at all. Well, Your Honor, when we conceived our first son, we were all living with her ex. We're all living in one house, so I mean.
Right, and he knew about it.
Mr. Gamboa said he felt suspicious because the babysitter would post pictures of Mr. Gamboa's house saying it was his house, and he also had a set of keys to the house. The truly evil thing is that Mrs. Gamboa did that to mess up the marriage because he was homeless and wanted a permanent place to stay.
She was always having the babysitter
That doesn't
around.
mean I'm cheating on you.
Somebody has a set of keys to your apartments and he's snapping photos saying that this is his house. And
Your Honor, I strongly believe that our babysitter was trying to mess up our marriage. Because at the end of this whole situation, our babysitter, when we kicked him out, he had no place to go.
Mrs. Gamboa says he left immediately after Dominic's birth and didn't come back to the hospital for 2 days, even though Dominic had jaundice. Judge Lauren says if her husband had done that, he would have been in big trouble. Mr. Gamboa says he had work to do to pay the bills and keep the roof over their heads.
I mean, you don't tell a woman in a hospital, I've been in the hospital and just had a baby. I wish my husband would say he was about to leave somewhere and come right back and didn't come back for 2 days. We're gonna have us a problem.
Your Honor, I couldn't get
Now
a hold of him.
you don't come back for 2 days and you say you sent someone to pick her up because you had to work, but you worked graveyard, so where were you all day?
Mrs. Gamboa submits videos to court that show Mr. Gamboa ignoring the child in potentially dangerous situations. She says he hasn't bonded with the baby at all due to his suspicions and is causing him to ignore Dominic. Judge Lauren agrees. So, can the DNA results help this father bond with his son?
It has been determined by this court that Mr. Gamboa, you are his father.
Thank you. Thank you. That's your baby. Bond with him. No more excuses. Bond with him.
Yes, I will. I will be his father.